the Great Awakening. However, in my case, I was completely astonished when I opened my eyes to see that great, vast nothingness, and it was blindingly bright, like my favorite summer t-shirt that my mom had just washed with bleach because we finally got a paycheck where she could afford real laundry detergent, and my whites and my socks and my white cotton underwear that were absolutely my most favorite, that now, unfortunately, like all things with women, become a sexualization of a human being. I digress. The whiteness was the most intense, burning, and longing to just get out of this abyss. Because see, for you to understand why bright white nothingness terrifies me, we do have to go back to the actual beginning. The actual beginning for me is at some point in the fall, right after I turned 4 and getting ready to go into kindergarten. I remember my mom was working one of her 3 jobs, and I was left at home with whom you all will now, unfortunately, be disclosed of all of his tactics, shenanigans, and outright abusive behavior that my mother, me, my sons, and most of my dad's family who was willing to tolerate it, including his mother and his sister and his other cousin, or excuse me, for him it was his niece, that I feel as though were either bamboozled by him or turned a blind eye to him because he was the baby and mother's favorite. My very first memory of my whole life at 4 years old is me in my Mickey Mouse white gown that my mom had worked so hard to buy at Goodwill for me because she saw me standing in the aisle from what I recollect now, because by deduction, Goodwill is the only place we could afford to shop. I was standing in this nightgown, my most favorite Minnie Mouse white nightgown. I remember it came all the way to my shins with a little black ruffle. It had Minnie Mouse ears on the mouse, and she was smiling so big, and it had pink and red on it. And I remember screaming. Again, you'll find actually that wailing is the most appropriate terms to be used in the traumas of my childhood, my youth, my first marriage, and the stuff that is currently happening in my current marriage with Matthew. See, that memory is so important to me because who, for their very earliest recollection, very first memory, core value is abandonment. I remember standing what felt like 100 yards away from my dad. But see, we were poor. We had no money. My mom was working 3 jobs. My dad was drinking every day. Now I know was doing heroin and cocaine and weed. My earliest recollection of that night is screaming, no, wailing, "Daddy, please don't leave me." I stood there, limp, lifeless, crying like any 4-year-old who sees a bag that their parent has packed with no other parent around and realizing you're the only one here now. Yes, that night in that Mickey Mouse gown is my first core memory and first core emotion, abandonment. It wasn't love. It wasn't peace. It wasn't you're enough. You matter. You are wanted. It was none of those things. It was absolute terror that no matter what I did for my daddy, he was going to leave me standing there and dipping out. I don't know how long he was gone, but I can tell you it was the shortest time he's ever been gone before he came back. I'm trying to find the most appropriate word here. My first dealings with emotion and trauma was when I was 4 years old, screaming for my father, "Daddy, don't leave. Daddy, come back." Most people would immediately go to, "Well, thank God you saw white nothingness. That must mean you're in heaven, your peace." But see, what you don't understand, for me, white is pure. It is unstained, untarnished. It is wanted. It is perfection. But I couldn't quite understand when I was in that moment in recovery or on the operating table, why, if everyone tells me, "We love you, you're a fighter, you're strong, you're wanted," why was that space not even filled with some white man in a white flowing robe with bleach white hair and a golden rod? There was no one. My first memory was a black abyss. But there was screaming, there was shouting, there were people there. They weren't paying me any attention, but at least I knew they were still there because there was noise and chaos. So for me, in the abyss, that is nothing but white, was the most panicked I've ever felt in my whole life, and thought, this can't be heaven, because why would God leave me when all I needed was someone to be there? Every abandonment fear that I had came crushing in, and there were not even walls to close in. All I wanted was to feel embraced and loved, and for there to be a whisper, "I have you, I want you." The only person in my life who have said those two words to me, or those two phrases to me, is my husband. And he wasn't there. Chapter 3, Recovery.